So the truth about productivity is that it's not really about the apps. It's not really about having a perfect system or about being disciplined or motivated more than anyone else. Those things do help, but what I've realized over the last few months is that there is actually a hidden secret to productivity and fulfillment. So grab a cup of tea and we can talk about it.
Next, we have purpose and drive. And arguably, this is probably one of the most important things when it comes to productivity and motivation. And the reason is because if you want to be productive, you need to have a clear goal in mind, right? You need to answer the question, why am I trying to be productive? Like if you're being so hard on yourself and you're like, why can't I work? Why can't I work? Why can't I be productive? Why can't I start a Shopify store or do whatever the case is? If you ask yourself why you can't do it, you need to ask yourself, why are you trying to do it anyway?
So basically, let's start with just figuring out what some of your goals are. And let's say you have 3 big ones, right? Make them big, which means that they're goals that are going to take daily work over a long period of time. And let's say just you want to make them big enough where number 1 is you want to write a book. Number 2 is you want to lose 20 pounds. And let's say number 3 is you want to start a YouTube channel.
You've got a lot of things to do. You need to breeze through them. Today, we're going to deep dive into productivity hacks that will make your life easier.
All right, so the truth about productivity is that it's not really about the apps. It's not really about having a perfect system or about being disciplined or motivated more than anyone else. Those things do help, but what I've realized over the last few months is that there is actually a hidden secret to productivity and fulfillment. So grab a cup of tea and we can talk about it. As you may or may not know, I am in the middle of writing a book, and it's a book about productivity. And so I've been thinking a lot over the last few months about like, what does productivity actually mean to me? And the main insight that I've realized is that productivity, to be honest, isn't really about getting more things done. It's mostly about learning to enjoy the journey. Because when we're having fun with doing the things that we're doing, then productivity kind of just takes care of itself. And this is kind of obvious, right? Like, you know, when we're doing stuff that we enjoy, when we're hanging out with friends or watching Netflix or playing video games, we're never worried about our productivity. We're never worried about motivation. We never say, I need to be motivated to watch this next episode of Netflix or to play Warzone with the boys. We only really need motivation, in inverted commas, for the things that are like short-term painful for long-term gain. And we as humans, we are absolutely terrible at motivating ourselves to do things in service to our future selves because we're all obsessed with instant gratification. And so the conundrum that we're dealing with is how do we make ourselves do things that are short-term painful in service to our future selves? How do we make ourselves, how do we motivate ourselves to be productive, to sit down and learn to code or to do our homework assignment or to work on that side project after we've come home from a hard day of work because we know we want to be entrepreneurs at the end of the day? And there's broadly 2 ways of answering this question. The first one is something that I call the Muhammad Ali method. This is called the Muhammad Ali method because Muhammad Ali, famous boxer, has this famous quote where he said something like, I hated every minute of training, but I said, don't quit, suffer now, and live the rest of your life as a champion. And Muhammad Ali is amazing, everyone loves him and all that stuff, obviously, but I think this approach to work, as like work equals suffering, that's an approach that I'm not really a fan of. And maybe that's what you need if you want to become like, you know, world heavyweight boxing champion or if you want to win gold at the Olympics. But you know, if I think about what I want from my life, it's not to be the best in the world at anything. It's not to win a gold medal or a Nobel Prize or to be a boxing champion. The thing that I want from my life, which I think is true for a lot of us, is that I want to live a nice balanced life where I'm having fun, working on things that I enjoy, doing things that contribute a bit to the world, and not really being overly concerned with like trying to be the best or trying to compete with other people. And so I think the problem with this Muhammad Ali approach to life, i.e. this work equals suffering approach to life, is that it kind of glorifies the hustle and it glorifies the grind, that you need to suffer, this needs to be painful. And if it's painful, it's because you're doing it right. And if you're not doing it, it's because you can't stand the pain. And obviously that's a huge oversimplification. And I'm sure his stance on this is actually more nuanced. But when I think of like my own life over the last 15 years and how I do things like YouTube channel, entrepreneurship, medical school, being a doctor, podcast, all this stuff that people message me about, none of it feels like suffering. None of it feels like a grind. None of it feels like work. None of it feels like a hustle. And so when my housemate says, you know, it's 11 o'clock at night, like, why are you still working? It's always a bit surprising because it really doesn't, like genuinely doesn't feel like work because it's actually fun. And that begs the question that, well, okay, how do we actually enjoy the things that we're doing? I'm glad you asked because there's, again, two broad ways of tackling this. The first one is the one that like books and stuff will tell you, which is that find your passion and do the things that you enjoy. That's like one way of doing it. The problem with that type of thinking, the whole find your passion and do what you enjoy, is that A, lots of us don't know what our passion is. It's like, you know, I don't know what my passion is. What am I passionate about? Who knows? Secondly, The things I'm passionate about, like, I don't know, playing World of Warcraft and trying to play songs on the guitar, I'm never gonna be able to make a living at playing World of Warcraft or playing songs on the guitar. And if I tried, I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna become one of those 0.01% of singer-songwriters who make it big in the world. You know, the deck is stacked against me, the odds are stacked against me. And the third problem with this whole narrative of find your passion and do what you love and all that kind of crap is that it doesn't recognize that we do often have to do things that we don't want to do. Like, unless you're born with a silver spoon up your behind, you probably don't have the freedom to just quit your job and follow your passion. Or your passion is art, great. Don't worry about working, just become an artist full time. Most of us don't have that level of privilege where we can just quit our jobs and follow our passion. And so when we're trying to answer this question of how do we enjoy the journey, how do we have fun, that approach of like, pick the fun things to work on, I don't think that works for most people. I think there is a second approach, and that's the one that I've been using most of my life. The second approach is actually, instead of doing the things you enjoy, learning to enjoy the things that you're doing. And this approach is great because it doesn't rely on any level of privilege, it doesn't rely on your external circumstances. All it relies on is like using a few mindset shifts and using a few like environmental tricks and using a few tips and techniques and hacks to make ourselves, or rather to encourage ourselves to enjoy more of the things that we're doing.
Steal with pride. Chances are you have a colleague who creates beautiful presentations, a manager who maintains a super clean spreadsheet, and a teammate who writes really effective emails. Steal those with pride. In my work Google Drive, I literally have a folder called To Reference where I save presentations, spreadsheets, documents that I've come across that I might need to use in the future. Pro tip, if you use PowerPoint or Google Slides, you can actually choose to make a copy of only selected slides and choose to remove all the speaker notes as well. This saves me so much time at work since I never have to start from scratch when creating a new presentation, for example. There's just no need to reinvent the wheel when there's something you can use right away. And if you feel uncomfortable with this concept of stealing, first, you're probably adding your own spin to it and not copying word for word. Second, show your appreciation by giving credit to the original creator. Number 2 takes this first tip to the next level, and that is to template all the things. Notion users are probably familiar with the template feature, where you can generate a pre-built page with a single click. This can obviously save a lot of time since you don't need to create the same section headers and checklists over and over again. Applying this concept at work, I manage a budget spreadsheet that needs to be updated regularly. I took 30 minutes 2 years ago to create this structure. So now I can just right click, make a duplicate of this template tab at the beginning of every quarter. Pro tip, it's best practice to include a readme or start here tab so new joiners don't message you with annoying questions, and even if you leave the team, the template lives on. So as you can see, we don't need a specific generate template button like Notion has to take advantage of this tip. I recommend identifying one repetitive task you're responsible for example, a monthly recap email. Take the time to create a structure you can use again and again.
Treat work sessions like you're going to the cinema. So if you're not one of the losers, unless you have genuine bladder issues, who needs to go to the loo during a film, you will have prepared yourself to be sat in a seat watching the film, immersed in that experience for maybe 2.5 hours without moving. And I think we should treat work sessions in order to enable us to get into a state of flow, of genuine immersion in our work in exactly the same way. I picked up this idea a few years ago from Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, and it has honestly been a complete game changer for me. I think just going into a work session thinking, I actually need to prepare to sit here for an hour, hour and a half and be really focused has really changed how I think about work sessions. It means that before I sit down to work in the office or at home, I make sure I've been to the toilet, stretched my legs, got myself a drink and a healthier than I probably would at the cinema snack, and then also made sure that my phone is on silent, not going to disturb me, make sure that notifications or do not disturb is on, allowing me to really immerse myself in the work that I'm about to do. And just like when you're at the cinema, if you're like me and you find it hugely distracting and annoying when people are like rustling around in their popcorn and generally making noise around you, taking you out of that like state of flow of watching the film, I really strongly recommend that you use either a playlist or an app like Endel, today's sponsor, more on them later, to really block out any distracting noise. This is so important for me that for when I'm in the office, I have my AirPods Pro with the noise cancelling function on. They're much more discreet than my bigger Bose noise cancelling headphones earphones that I wear when I'm at home. All of that then puts me in a state of mind where I am ready to get into a state of flow and immersion in the work that I'm going to do. The second habit is to batch tasks before you start. So batching is a very simple idea where rather than switching between, I'm going to water this plant here, and then I'm going to do a bit of reading, and then I'm going to do some work, and then I'm going to clean the floor upstairs. You try to batch similar tasks. So watering all of the plants at the same time all at once, which just generally makes life way more efficient. I think the question here is really just like, how do I implement batching day to day? And I think there are really two ways that I implement batching. The first is batching by project. And what I mean by that is that when I'm at work and I'm working on, let's say, something for my client, James, when I have all of the emails and documents open from James, it's way more efficient for me to do all of the work for James while I have everything there and open than it is to do something for James and then think, oh, actually, I really need to do that thing for Sandra. So I'll just switch over and close everything and then need to open everything for Sandra and then open everything again for James later when I go back to James. Batching by project effectively means do everything for James and then everything for Sandra. It sounds pretty obvious, but I think actually being really conscious of when you are switching between projects way too frequently is a hugely healthy mindset to adopt. It allows you to be much more efficient in how you're working, both practically in terms of not having to open and close different things for different projects, and also in terms of how your mind is operating. It is in the mindset of working for James, do all of the work for James while your mind is focused and in that frame of mind, rather than switching between different projects. A top tip for me is when I'm at work and I'm working on, say, 3 different projects at once, I actually have a different desktop for each of those different projects. So I actually have to move between desktops, which obviously allows me to keep all of the stuff relevant to a single project open in one desktop all at once, and also creates resistance for me in terms of flicking between the different tasks across different projects. And the second kind of batching is just batching by task. So unless I get an insanely urgent email, I try not to reply to emails more than once every hour or 2. So I'll let my emails build up and then do the task of writing and replying to emails all at once. And I also batch tasks outside of work. So for example, when I'm cooking a meal, I'll make sure I cook 2 or 3 meals worth of that recipe, because it doesn't take massively more time to cook 2 or 3 times the amount. But obviously if I cook a new meal every single night, that takes way longer. And I also batch chores. So if I'm cleaning, I'll clean the entire house for 3 hours rather than doing bits and bobs here and there. So yeah, for me, batching is really all about just having a consciousness of doing more of this type of task or this type of project right now to avoid having to switch between things, losing focus, and overall just spending more time than I should be on those tasks.
So basically, let's start with just figuring out what some of your goals are. And let's say you have 3 big ones, right? Make them big, which means that they're goals that are going to take daily work over a long period of time. And let's say just you want to make them big enough where number 1 is you want to write a book. Number 2 is you want to lose 20 pounds. And let's say number 3 is you want to start a YouTube channel. First, before we get into this exercise, you have to know effectively what the rituals are that are most likely to reach this goal, right? So let's be real. The most likely habit that will result in you writing a book is as simple as writing. And in particular, I'll just say 500 to 1,000 words a day. Okay? When we talk about losing 20 pounds, let's just say that, sure, there are dozens of habits we could do, but for the sake of argument, we'll just say consciously eating daily, right? This is the number 1 habit. If I just pay attention to what I eat daily, then I'm pretty likely to reach that goal or inch towards it. And then for the final one, start a YouTube channel. Let's say the most predictable habit is uploading once a week, okay? So these are basically daily rituals, right? Besides this one, we could say basically the daily ritual would be script or film for 30 minutes a day. So these are the things that we want, right? These are 3 big goals. These are not things that you're going to achieve in, let's say, a week, right? These are often months. So we take this one piece of paper, and my classmates in my medical program would always make fun of me because they knew I would never work without this piece of paper in front of me. But who's laughing now? And I'll show you why. So we fold this bad boy up like this, okay? And this is going to last a couple days, but each side is one work day. And at the top of the page here, I would write whatever the focus is, right? So let's just say the focus today is, let's just call this goals because we're going to work on all 3 today. And then we're going to break down this sheet into 3 blocks. And let's just say each block here is 30 minutes, okay? Block 1, block 2, and block 3. Each one is 30 minutes, and I'm going to put the 30 up here so we know. Now, what I do basically is I write down basically 1,000 words or for 30 minutes. So let's just say, we'll just say write 500 words. All right. Goal number 2, consciously eating. Let's just say, how do we turn this into something actionable? Let's say meal prep. So today, what I'm going to do is meal prep. And let's just say that's about 30 minutes. And the third goal for starting a YouTube channel is today, our 30 minutes towards that goal is, let's just say, we're going to script on this particular day. Script, new content. So the reason this is so valuable is that inevitably where people fail with goals is that big goals like this don't tell you what you have to do on a daily basis. And the things you have to do on a daily basis are certain habits and rituals.
Anytime I've had a situation in my life where I felt stressed or I felt unmotivated or I felt like, oh, I'm not being productive enough, usually it's because I forgot to have fun. And there's a great phrase that I think philosopher Alan Watts used, which is about approaching things sincerely versus approaching things seriously. And I often find myself approaching things too seriously. Like, you know, it's no fun playing a game with someone who's taking you too seriously. And so when I remember to have fun, I switch to approaching things sincerely, like I'm still gonna give it my all, but I'm gonna recognize that this is a game and I'm gonna try and enjoy myself while I'm doing it. In fact, I even have a post-it note attached to my computer monitor at all times that says, this is going to be fun. And anytime I find I'm looking around and I catch a glimpse of that post-it note, this is gonna be fun, I just remind myself, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. This is fine, this is all good. I don't need to feel that work is suffering. I can just treat it as a game and have fun along the way. Tip number 2 is all about turning things into a game. Now this used to be a very popular like corporate speak thing back in the day, I think like 10 years ago, gamification. It was all about gamification. And if you gamified the workplace, then the employees would be more motivated and more productive. And so the word gamification, a lot of people now like vom a little bit in their mouths when they hear it because it just sounds so, you know, it harks back to that era. But I think gamification is actually like absolutely game changing. So for example, when I was going through medical school, in my first year of med school, I really, really struggled because I had the mindset of this is supposed to be hard. And I just didn't have the thought like I could treat this as a game. But in my second year of medical school, I started treating things more as a game. And so when I would make my revision timetables, I'd kind of write down all the subjects I needed to know, and then I would color code them based on how well I knew them. And so they would all start off as red, and then as I got better at them, they'd go yellow, and then they'd go green. And just that kind of color coding helped me think of it more as a game.
I'll start with Arc browser, then Perplexity, which I have set up as the default search engine within Arc. After using this combo for a while, going back to using Chrome or Safari to search something using Google feels like using a flip phone. A couple major quality of life improvements you notice right away is first off the vertical sidebar for all your bookmarks and tabs. It's way easier to organize this way and doesn't have that ugly look of 20 tabs up top like every other browser, at least if you're a tab hoarder like me. You can hide the sidebar, then it will pop back open when you hover, so you always have a clean look. Then if you start to have too many tabs open, you click this little broom button and it will use AI to analyze and sort them into categories. You can also create different spaces for profiles or between work, personal, and school, or by interest. And if you open up a tab that fits into a different profile, you can just drag it over there. Overall, there's way more options for organization, and having your workspace just never feel cluttered is really nice. Then the split view windows is huge. Just drag a tab out and it automatically jumps into split view. Then it will resize them automatically as you drag. So much better than switching between tabs or using separate windows that are weird to resize. In a similar realm, as if you're watching a YouTube video and click on another tab, it automatically switches to picture-in-picture. This is already a feature in phones, so I don't know why no other browser has implemented that. And just those features right there are such game changers, and now that I've used them, it seems insane that no one ever thought of them before. There's some other cool stuff too, like it will rename downloaded files based on content, or it will show link previews when hovering over a link. There's great keyboard shortcuts. You can screenshot or screen capture the full page natively, and these built-in easels, which are a whiteboard-like interface for taking notes, drawing, and collaborating. And they're always adding new stuff. They have a big focus on customization. You can toggle on and off features you like or don't like. So they're already integrated with a ton of AI features and made the experience much more modern and fast, but they also partnered with Perplexity, and you can set it to your default search engine. That takes the whole thing to the next level. So Perplexity is a much faster way to get from question to answer. I'll type in the search bar, what are the key benefits of Arc browser? All right, instead of a list of links to go through, Perplexity basically searches the internet for you and condenses what it found all into a short page, like a personal AI research assistant. So I have an answer, links to the sources it used to get that answer, then some media like related images and videos, and suggested questions to continue the conversation with just a click. Using sources to formulate its responses cuts down on hallucinations significantly. It's called retrieval augmented generation, and it will tend to be more accurate than just asking ChatGPT. And it does all this extremely fast in a really clean interface with no ads. So I use it on the web and the mobile app every day. There are some really nice additional benefits if you use the paid version, like access to different advanced LLMs. So you can switch between GPT-4 and Claude and Llama and Mixtral. You can look into all that if you really like it, but the free version is amazing too. Perplexity is the first place I go when I have a question, before Google, before ChatGPT, or anywhere else.
Next, we have purpose and drive. And arguably, this is probably one of the most important things when it comes to productivity and motivation. And the reason is because if you want to be productive, you need to have a clear goal in mind, right? You need to answer the question, why am I trying to be productive? Like if you're being so hard on yourself and you're like, why can't I work? Why can't I work? Why can't I be productive? Why can't I start a Shopify store or do whatever the case is? If you ask yourself why you can't do it, you need to ask yourself, why are you trying to do it anyway? You need to identify a purpose or a goal that you're going for. And in my opinion, the goal needs to be something a little bit more than just like, I want to buy a Lamborghini. It needs to mean something to you. And the more that it means to you, the more drive and the more motivation you're going to have and the more willing you are going to be to want to work. And believe it or not, a lot of people actually DM me and ask me, how do I have more, like, how do I get motivation? How do you stay motivated? Like I have no motivation and I'm broke. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your purpose? What's your goal? Well, I want to be wealthy. Okay, everyone wants to be wealthy, but like you need to have a clear idea of where you are going. If you don't know where you're going and you don't know where you're at, how can you possibly expect to get to that goal? Do you expect it to just happen randomly? Like you just like, I'm gonna just walk around this forest and you know, I'm randomly gonna find like the oasis. Like, no, you need to know exactly where you're going if you want to get there before you die, right? So that's the point. For me personally, it's about my family. You know, I'm getting older now and I want to have a family. I want to have a lot of kids. I want to reform the education system, and these things are going to cost a lot of money because I want to have a lot of kids. I want to have a few houses. I want to be able to go from house to house as I please. And so I know that I have big goals. I know where I want to go. I know exactly what my life should look like in the next 10 years and what I want to do. And it requires me to have a lot of money. So that's why I'm working so hard now. But the point of all of that is that I know what I want. And I found it that I'm a lot more productive in an environment in which I'm inspired. For example, like when I went to Seattle this one time, I went and stayed at this massive hotel and it just had like this great grand like dome type thing and like a huge Christmas tree and like a restaurant, and it was late at night and there was like just a few people there and there was like multiple stories and stuff. And I remember how grand it was, and there was just like chairs and tables in the center, and I would just get on my computer there and I was just able to be so productive because like I was just so inspired by the environment. I think if you could switch up your environment, that's really good. And a second side to this coin is you don't want to be around like negative people. You don't want to be around noise. For example, when I lived with my mom, she had a lot of people in the house and they were always talking and they were always asking me to do stuff, and I wasn't able to really like get in the zone, which I think is really important because if you get focused, you don't want to be distracted. So say you live with your parents and you're not able to like move out and have a really cool inspiration or travel or whatever, maybe just go to like a free place. Like a library is a great place I used to work at. Hotel lobbies are really, really good. Coffee shops are obviously free to go to and you can go to those. But just like any spot, like be creative. You can go to restaurants, you can go to a bunch of different spots, and I find it really helpful. So now I'm going to talk about the softwares and technology. Now the first thing I want to mention is your phone. It would be best to keep your phone in a separate room if you're trying to get like 2 to 3 hours of work. And I think the best way to do it is to be like, okay, I'm going to work for an hour or 90 minutes. I'm gonna keep my phone in this room on do not disturb so I don't get any notifications at all. And then I'm gonna work for 90 minutes. Then I'm gonna go check my phone and be on it for 20 minutes. And then I'm gonna do it again. So you can kind of block it off. I think that's a really effective way to go about it regarding your phone, because your phone can be very, very distracting.
Everything that I've done sustainably has been because of intrinsic motivation. I've genuinely enjoyed the thing. But you can genuinely enjoy a thing and still find it really hard to get started. And I think that's where the biggest procrastination comes in for all of us, where it's actually just showing up to the gym. That's the hard part. Like once you're there, it's kind of easy. It's writing those first 10 words, because once you've started writing the first 10, it's kind of easier to enjoy the process of writing the rest of them. And so the way I think about it is to get over that like hump of procrastination, that activation energy to get started. At that point, I will use every tool that in my arsenal to just get me to do the thing for 2 minutes. Because I think once you do the thing for 2 minutes, it becomes so much easier to actually enjoy the process and sustain it.
And you're so right when it comes to procrastination, like that getting started point. I've again just learned this from podcast guests that I've had. Nia Ayala, again, I refer to him. He said to me one day on this podcast, he was like, people procrastinate usually because there's a great deal of psychological discomfort surrounding starting the task. And a lot of the time, especially with a gym or even an essay, that psychological discomfort is like, you don't have the answers. So I don't know how to use the machines at the gym, or I don't feel competent enough to even write this essay. So I'm just going to do the fucking dishes.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to hoover the whole house and anyone else's house that needs hoovering today.
Exactly.
You made a video about procrastination, didn't you?
Yeah.
Break that down for me. What's in the video?
So
the video is called How to Stop Procrastinating, right?
Yeah. So the way I think about procrastination, basically, procrastination is a problem with getting started. Kind of this law of inertia, Newton's first law, that if something is at rest, it will continue to stay at rest. But if something's moving, it will continue to move without needing an external force. And so the key to overcoming procrastination is that little nudge at the start towards actually getting started. And all of the techniques around that, like in the whole like psychology research around this, is just around make it as easy as possible. So reduce all of the friction to doing it. If you want to learn the guitar, then have the guitar by your sofa rather than in the wardrobe where you're never going to see it. And if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, you're never going to do it. There's like the external environmental friction towards doing the thing. But then there's also the internal friction. It's like those narratives that we tell ourselves, the psychological discomfort of going to the gym, the I don't want to see how other people are going to see me, the even having the wrong sort of goal. Like if my goal in writing the book is, I really want to hit the New York Times bestseller list, then it's really, really hard to bring myself to write anything, because now every single word I have to write has to be a New York Times bestselling word. Whereas if the goal is, to be honest, I just want to write a book I'm proud of that's fun to write, that's actually within my control, and it becomes so much easier to get started at doing the thing. So to overcome procrastination, we need to eliminate external friction, i.e. the environmental stuff. We need to try our best to get rid of the internal friction, like the emotional side of it, the mindset, the perfectionism, the fear, the discomfort. And then if we still need help, there are a few hacks. The one that I use all the time is the 2-minute rule, which is where I will genuinely convince myself I'm only going to do it for 2 minutes. And if I want, I'm allowed to stop after the 2 minutes, because 2 minutes is better than nothing. But like 95% of the time, I decide to continue, because 2 minutes is all you need to change your life.
Yeah,
I should tweet that. That's good.
That's really good. That 2 minute thing is fascinating to me, because one of the things that I see as another psychological barrier to starting is people view it as like, they view the challenge as Mount Everest, whereas they've got I'll say it in another way, they view the challenge as moving Mount Everest. And really, if they viewed it as just like moving one pebble at a time, it becomes such a simple task.
Yeah.
And I get this a lot when entrepreneurs ask me, they say, Steve, I want to start a business. Where do I start? And you can hear in the question that they see it as moving Mount Everest. Yeah. And I'm like, well, today, all you have to do is think of a name. Just think of like 50 names, make a short list of names. Yeah. And then we'll revisit it tomorrow. And then tomorrow, maybe think of, go and check if the website's available. And then we'll revisit it the day after. Yeah. And when it becomes that, and when it becomes sort of really small itemized, one small step at a time, and you're not having to get from stair 0 to 1,000 immediately, it becomes so, the psychological discomfort fades away. It feels achievable. And that your 2 minute rule is doing a similar thing, where it's saying, well, today I've only got to do just if I can open the Word document and write the title, and then we're done. And so that's fascinating. What about, you were going to say something else there?
Yeah, I mean, just to your point there, have you come across the blog Wait But Why?
No.
Oh, it's incredible. You should definitely interview Tim Urban when you're in America.
Oh, do you know what? Writer. I literally yesterday went on his Instagram and sent him a DM.
Oh, great. Yeah, he's awesome. Any podcast he's ever been on, I've been like, oh, this is so sick. He has a great blog post series about overcoming procrastination. And the way he refers to that point you just made is that there are lots of tasks that are very like vague and icky. And you have to be able to un-ickify a task. And something like start a business is icky. Something like learn to code is icky, because like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, where do you even start? Whereas brainstorm 10 ideas for a name and pick one of them is a very clearly defined next action step. And so I get this with students all the time where people are like, oh, I don't have the motivation to study for my chemistry exam. It's like, what's on your to-do list? Study for my chemistry exam. That's never going to happen. Read chapter 1 and answer questions 4 to 5 are a reasonable thing, a reasonably defined next action step. And so what I do is anytime I find myself procrastinating from something, I think, okay, am I procrastinating because I actually, the task is too icky? I don't know what I have to do. Because once I know what I have to do, I can then do it for 2 minutes and it gets done.